Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a lot of great conversations lined up for you. First, let's talk about the Republican National Convention pulling out of the national debate, saying that they felt like those debates were too biased. We'll get into a conversation with our culture crew about the implications of such a maneuver. Also, it is the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in baseball. However, does the breaking the color barrier, it seems to have come with some issues, as the Negro League was decimated as a result. We'll talk a little bit about that history. And then later, folks, let's talk about love. We're going to be bringing in relationship specialist and expert LaDon Black to give us some insight about what Cam Newton had to say. Was Cam right or was Cam wrong? We'll have that conversation. And then, of course, much later, we'll talk about Chris Rock's brother Kenny saying that he signed up for a celebrity boxing match and he wants to fight Will Smith. My question is, should these brothers keep pushing for payback? Let's have that discussion. So we got that and a whole lot more. So stay with us. It's all happening today on The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. It is Friday. What is it? Friday, April the 15th. And we're very, very excited about what we got lined up for you. A lot of big conversations. And I'm very, very excited just because we have a number of our culture crew members that are going to be joining us in a moment. We're going to be joined by Shaquaya McKenzie, who is an educator and activist, Bakari Jones, who is a strategist and as an activist, and we also going to be hearing from Shinedu Nkwafor, who is a diversity, inclusion, and equity specialist, to talk to us about a number of conversations. So I am very, very excited about what we got lined up. But the first discussion that we wanted to have is the big discussion that people are talking about, which is around the Republican National Convention. Yeah, folks, they have officially put out a statement saying that they will no longer be a part of the national presidential debates that have been hosted by the Commission on Presidential Debates. Now, this is the nonprofit commissioner that is run by members of both parties. It was founded back in 1987 to ensure a fair process for organizing debates between the main White House candidates, and the CPD has been really the ones that we've been watching. You know, when you look at those national debates, when we've seen, you know, the debates with President Trump, or President Biden, or Obama, President Obama, and, you know, all of these other candidates, that's CPD. Well, let me just share with you with the Republican National Chair, Ronna McDaniels, put it out just a little bit ago. Yesterday, it was posted to the Twitter page. Check this out, folks. It said that the RNC unanimously votes to withdraw from Commission on Presidential Debates. They're saying that according to Ronna McDaniels, the debates are an important part of the democratic process, and the RNC is committed to free and fair debates. The Commission on Presidential Debates is biased and has refused to enact simple and common sense reforms to help ensure fair debates, including hosting debates before voting begins and selecting moderators who have never worked for candidates on the debate stage. Today, the RNC voted to withdraw from the biased CPD, and we're going to find newer, better debate platforms to ensure that future nominees are not forced to go through the biased CPD in order to make their case to the American people. That is their statement. Now, again, this is a nonprofit forum that included both voices from both parties, Democrats and Republicans. So I will be interested to see what the RNC is planning to do. Like, what are the alternative debate platforms the RNC plans to use? And why would they consider the CPD to be biased? We're going to have this conversation. I want to bring in Culture Crew member Shaquaya McKenzie, Bakari, who is an educator and activist, Bakari Jones, strategist, who's been working in various spaces in the Black community. And then, of course, Shinedu Nkwafo, who is a diversity, inclusion, and equity specialist. Shaquaya, Shinedu, and Bakari, thank you for joining us for the conversation today.
Peace, Farajii. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, and we look. I wanted to get into this part of the discussion. First and foremost, I'm gonna start with you, Bakari. I'm not quite sure because they did. I mean, the RNC chair, Ronna McDaniels, did say that she felt like there was some bias there, that the CPD refused to enact simple and common sense reforms to ensure fair debates. I'm not quite sure what type of reforms the RNC is looking for. But what's your take on this?
I mean, I think that, you just share with everyone that's listening in or watching that the CPD is made up of both parties. So I think the question is really, what weren't the Republicans able to articulate, sort of justify moving forward within this nonprofit organization? What weren't they able to bring to the forefront to remove the bias, essentially, right? I think that for me, that's I guess really what I'm missing. And I don't want to jump ahead. I want to, everybody to be able to chime in. But I think if this were, if you were able to say it was more heavily weighted by one party or the other, I think maybe the Republicans will have a little bit of an argument. But to know that it's made up of both parties is it's troubling. And, my mind immediately asks, well, who, if this group made up of both parties can't find neutral ground, why even bother with the Republican space? You're preaching to the choir, as they say. So those are my initial thoughts, Raji, after hearing this news.
Shinedu, when we're talking about and I mean, you've worked in many spaces, including, I mean, you're doing your current work of diversity, inclusion, and equity. You also have been working as an activist for social justice. And importantly, you have been a huge advocate of civic participation from the local level all the way up to the federal level. What does this mean? How big of and how significant is this, that in an election year, that one of the main parties decides to withdraw from having national conversations about its policies?
I think this is very dangerous for a multitude of reasons. I think particularly this plays into, in my opinion, this plays into that idea of election stolen and this and that. Like, this is just yet another component of that. It's very interesting to me. It seems like folks were playing a sport, and all of a sudden the Republicans want to take their ball and go home because they weren't winning. That's what it seems like, because this is a national debate, a national conversation. And I think just based on information that has come out since the quote unquote election been stolen, et cetera, it seems like they're trying to build a case that everybody is against them, everybody's against them. So this is why they have to kind of perform in some type of separatist way. And I think it's a very divisive way of kind of creating this narrative that something is going on in this country where everybody's being unfair to Republicans and a lack of free speech, et cetera, which is just actually not true. It's very dangerous in this day and age.
And I think the huge danger is, and I've been in Bakari and Shinedu, I've been kind of like tracking how this announcement has been hitting, social media, and people are saying, okay, so you don't want to put your candidates on this debate platform. Is it really because you feel like there's a bias, or do you feel like you don't have a real agenda for 2022 and 2024 outside of the whims of President Donald Trump. And here's why I'm saying this, because Mitch McConnell, Senator Mitch McConnell out of Kentucky, he has gone on record to say the Republican Party has no agenda for 2022. And so people are saying, well, so you're backing out of this debate. So that might be a part of it. But the huge part of it is former President Donald Trump has always used the CPD and the whole debate platform as a target to talk about, how they're not treating him fair, even though in both 2016 and 2020, he just, with NPR said, his bombastic presence on the debate stage and his disregard for rules and guidelines have played in has left a sour taste in so many people's mouths that now the RNC is saying, oh, we don't like how this is being handled. So I'm not sure if it's about policy or personality of Donald Trump. But Bakari, what are your thoughts?
I mean, Farajii, I think we've been talking about this. I think it's also strategy, right? You remove yourself from this sort of the neutral ground, the middle ground that the CPD represents in this space, and say we're not going to engage here at all. So the assumption then, right, like at this stage, we can assume, or we'll assume in this scenario, that they're going to create their own platform to host that space. Does that mean that the Democratic candidates engage in the RNC controlled space? That's one question, right? And then again, they're able to control the narrative with whatever moderators, hosts, et cetera, that they want to create in the space. But it also, I think, to Sinead's point, is incredibly divisive. And again, instead of at least being able to have a conversation in a neutral space, you're saying, again, they took the whole ball, the stage, the presenters, the circus, the peanuts. They took everything and said, no, we're not doing this at all with you all. We're going to go into a separate space. And I think, it's dangerous. And I think one of the other dangers, for me at least, that comes up is just, again, the diversion of resources, right? The effort that it takes now to have, or could potentially take now, to have multiple debates in a space to, again, divide the American attention span. It's intentionally, again, right? We've been talking about strategy. It's intentionally exhausting. So how, who's on first, who's on like, how do you keep up in this environment, right? And I think that the level of pandemonium and fear that the Republicans have been peddling, I feel like this is right in line with what we've seen over the last several months, years.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there has been a lot of resources. And one of my concerns, Sinead, is, okay, if y'all talking about going to a different space, like this is 35 years in the making, CPD, right? It's an established tradition. It's an established institution that has incorporated both parties, right? This is something that both parties agreed to. So what is going to be the new alternative, better space that people are going to feel like they can, quote unquote, have real trust in, that is going to be able to, provide the type of fairness that the RNC is looking for. I'm just trying to figure that out. Like, okay, you're not happy with this, instead of asking for reform, because a couple of the big things is people are saying the moderators are biased, and the moderators that they've chosen are based on commission votes. Those are people, mostly journalists, that have been on both sides of the aisle, represents both sides of the aisle, liberal and conservative, like left and right. So I'm like, okay, so where are you going to find a different platform? This is outside of this that most people are familiar with. Where are you going to find a different platform? You on mute, bro. There you go.
That mute unmute thing is never going to get old.
Yeah.
You don't find a new platform. I think, again, remember, we're saying RNC, but it's not the RNC. It's Trump world. When I think about them pulling out of this, I think about when Trump didn't win on Twitter. Now it's Let's Start Truth Social. It's this idea of we're going to create, in my opinion, just this chaos that has nothing to do with nothing, that's based on no facts, that's just based on emotion. And
right.
I find it very interesting that I run this idea through my head. What if Hillary had some of these same thoughts and brought some of these same things forward when she lost? There would have been a whole cavalcade of, oh, she's a sore loser and so on and so forth. This is literally coming down to the RNC becoming enigma based on one person, and that's Donald Trump. And it's not about truth. It's really about power. It's about who is delivering what first and in the way that they like. You know, we talk all the time about, you know, Fox News, how they're so-called, quote unquote, no longer a news station. They're just delivering whateverisms. And what's scary is when you're delivering information in the same form that other folks are delivering truth, you skew the minds of the audience. And I think that's really what's taking place right now. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just, part of me is starting to feel like, okay, you guys just don't want to play fair. You know what I mean? Like, part of me is starting to feel like, okay, at this point, you got so many, and you, this is like so frustrating. But at this point, you have all of these agenda items and these political stances that you're taking, whether it's about voting rights, whether it's about gender identity, whether it's about, I mean, we can go down the list of things that we've been talking about in this show, and Brother Roland's been talking about on his show, of what the Republicans are against. And I feel like more people know what the Republicans are against than what they actually are standing for. And as a result of that, it's like, okay, if you don't have an agenda, if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a plan for how to take this country moving forward, that is built upon a consensus without propaganda being the lever to activate people, you feel like, oh no, I'm gonna take the ball and go home because I don't like the way this game is being played. You know what I mean? That's what it's coming across to me like right now, Bakari. And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, okay, so are we so built? Are these folks so beholden to party politics over the interests of the American people? Because the American people should hear both sides, right? The American people, we should hear both sides. And I think it's more than insulting to believe that we can't hear both sides and then make a judgment, a decision on where we stand. That's insulting for somebody to make the choice for us instead of saying, hey, here are the two sides, y'all choose. It's got to be all of this other behind the scenes manipulation and trickery and deception and propaganda versus here's where we totally stand, and then let the American people. And I think it's just crazy. It's absolutely insane to me.
It's super interesting to me also, Farajii. You know, I think that them stepping away from the space is telling of something, right? Even if when you're not saying something, you're still saying something. What is them stepping away from this space other than I'm going to take my ball and go home? What else are they saying? And I think on some level, we could ask the question, is this also the Republicans, the RNC saying, we don't have the confidence to actually perform in a fair space, right? We have to move the goalposts. We have to leave and to create our own space if we're going to win. Or is this part of, like I said, a part of another overarching strategy that they have in general, right? Because I think to your point is we know all the things that the Republicans are against and not necessarily anything that they are especially standing for other than divisiveness. So one of the questions that, you know, like I said, that's coming up for me is, you know, is this also them indicating that they don't believe that they can actually win over quote unquote hearts and minds of folks if they remain in that neutral CPD space?
And that's sad. I mean, if your platform is strong enough to take to withstand public scrutiny, then you should put it forth to the American people to determine. But it's sad. And you know, people are checking in. I want to share what a couple folks are saying. Shakira said, good afternoon. I believe the RNC is afraid to debate because of their record. A lot of their base only listen to Fox News and they don't know the truth about what's going on. There is no bias. I mean, that's sad. Now, here's the thing, folks. Fox News is one of the most watched cable news stations on TV. Their ratings are actually better than MSNBC and CNN. I was reading another piece just a couple of weeks ago where they say more, a lot of Democrats watch Fox News. So we can say, Fox News is propaganda, but people are watching Fox News, right? I mean, people are watching Hannity. People are watching some of the other personalities on there. They're watching Tucker Carlson. They're watching Fox News. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the big things. So I think that's the interesting part about it. Janelle said, look, Farajii, they have a plan to take the country backwards, not forwards. That's the very definition of conservative, but usually the time debates roll around, minds are already made up. Well, maybe change the debate schedule. I think you're on to something, Janelle, and Sinead, this might be the thing. Maybe change the debate schedule. I would like, if we're doing a gubernatorial, like this year is a midterms election, so you're talking about governors and congressional members, but maybe for the presidential debate, put them at a different time of year, so that way you can line them up so people can figure it out. It's let me tell y'all something, man. It's hard to figure out. You have, I think, in the last cycle, and please, Sinead or Bakari, correct me if I'm wrong. We had on the Democratic side, we saw at least 10 to 15 candidates.
There were a lot, yes.
Right. And I think I was watching one debate. I mean, that joint was like, it looked crazy. You know what I mean? You had like 10 or 12 candidates. And you had to listen to where each one is. Now, here's the thing about us as the American people, and this is no shade on us. We're just not that in tune with political affairs in this country to sit down and to look at the positions and programs and ideas of 10 to 12 people running for president on the Democratic side, and then do another 10 people on the Republican side. Most people are not doing
it. Wrap it up, huh, Farajii? Said wrap it
up. Cue the Oscar music. They're not doing it. They're just not doing it. I mean, come on. We're not sitting in there like, oh, okay, here we go. Andrew Yang. Let me see what he's standing for. Oh, Mr. Buttigieg. We weren't doing that. We weren't doing it. Mm. Most people go and watch the debates. I don't think because their minds were made up. They were just trying to see it. It's like the playoffs. It's like, in any sport, you know what I mean? You just like, okay, who's going to make it to the champion? All right, once we get to playoffs, we start to pay attention. Because it's mentally, I'm saying this, and I'm not trying to, again, not throwing shade, but mentally, we can wrap our heads around 3 or 4 people versus 10. The choices are too many. And a lot of times, the ideas are overarching. They overlap with one another. So the debates are important. I don't think people are completely made their minds up. But I do know that the debates are important. I watch the debates, and I know that the other part of it, Sinead, people say it's like a lot of theater, political theater. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like what we saw with Donald Trump, that was political theater.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But they still serve a purpose. And I mean, if you really want to know which candidates are really standing, you should watch the debates. But go ahead, Sinead. What's your take, bro?
I think, again, we should very much pay attention to history. You gave a good point about Fox. Fox was founded, Fox News, in like 1996. When you look at the big three, ABC, CBS, NBC, we're talking about 20s and 40s. So you're talking about real journalistic integrity as it pertains to the top three. But when you think about Fox, it came in this era of Nielsen, the era of ratings. And if you pay very close attention, that is the era that's, lack of better words, that's trumping worldwide. That's the era of saying nefarious things, but it gets the most information. It's not about who's telling the truth. It's about who's getting there first. And it's now changing what journalism is. And if it's changing what journalism is, it's changing how people are consuming news, what is true and what is sort of kind of true. I think when you think of that component and its power and what's going on with the RNC pulling out, let's use real examples. This is no different than we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. It never happened because there is no plan. It's just, let's make bold statements. Let's get people emboldened and then do nothing about it. And it is getting people emboldened. If you've paid attention to CPAC, I think CPAC was just last week or earlier this week in Orlando. This is now getting international, where you have the people in Hungary that are following the idea of the Trumpian tale, the idea of being bigoted, the idea of telling some truths. Like, this is now changing the idea of what exactly democracy is. And I think that's where the danger comes in. Yeah. And if we continue to have our fellow Americans and fellow people that are, neighbors, brothers and sisters, but we don't know what truth and fact is, as we saw on January 6th, where they said some people were just going to do a tour, it's going to really come down to I would call it mental anarchy.
And let me tell you something. It puts a huge amount of pressure on network television to produce forums that are to the Republicans' national committee's liking. Is CNN going to produce? Now we're going to have to we may have to start to tune in to CNN or to Fox. And if we start to tune into these networks, then they could possibly present the views in a slant, right? Because it's on their network, and we know certain networks are liberal and some are conservative. So it opens the door for Pandora's box. And as we close this, I want to share something from the Washington Post, that they say that this upcoming presidential election of 2024 is likely for the first time since 1972, folks. Check this out. When Richard Nixon refused to face George McGovern, there will be a presidential vote with no general election debates. And people are concerned that on the surface that this is going to protect Donald Trump, who is presumed to be the Republican nominee, which would be absolutely insane to me and to all thinking people around this country if he becomes the Republican nominee. But that is one of the big concerns. If he chooses to run, this will be the consequences, that they don't want to expose him again, and where he is going to have to face questions about policy and not about the circus and controversy. And he may have to face questions about that too. And the Republicans are looking to protect him. And this is going to open up Pandora's box, Bakari and Shanadu. I'm telling you, if there aren't any real conversation where the American people can hear the points of view of both parties, and we're going to have to look and find and figure out who is hosting the debates and how are they, and whether and there isn't a bipartisan consensus like what the Commission on Presidential Elections. Look, I'm not saying that they got the debate situation perfect, but the idea of having a bipartisan platform is something I think we need to work toward. But if there isn't a bipartisan platform, it's going to open up the door for propaganda, for bias. They're talking about bias. This is going to open the door for bias. So what, you're going to have to debate on Newsmax or some other conservative platform? It's not going to bode well for the American people who have to go to the polls when we can't hear what the candidates have to say from both sides. It's just not going to bode well. And Bakari, to be real honest with you, it's going to leave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And this could possibly happen, where this may be one of the lowest turnouts in presidential election in American history, because of all of the tomfoolery and the BS behind the scenes that are happening, that's chipping away the idea, chipping away at the idea of the American people hearing the truth from both sides. Bakari, you got the final word. What's your take on that?
Ooh, what a space to have a final word in, Farajii. Man, like I said, I think that the Republicans stepping away in this space, I guess I'll say what my hope is that we, in the next several weeks and months, are going to see another level of strategy and offense, so to speak, coming from the Democratic Party, so that, we can create spaces where, again, folks that are voting in favor of policies that are going to benefit Black and brown people especially have the space to get all of the information. I think it would be irresponsible of us to not engage, even though that is ultimately what the Republicans are choosing to do in this instance. I think it would be irresponsible on our part to not go on the offense and say, okay, they stepped away. Here's the recap. Here's the, you know what I mean? To be able to package this and share this information. I think one of the things that all three of us have sort of touched on is that level of divisiveness and just the level of exhaustion and fatigue that it leads to, that I think can easily see folks feeling disenfranchised and could potentially lead to low turnout, right? So I think it means that we have to be more proactive in being able to synthesize information in ways that people are able to digest, to make the best decisions for us.
Yep. And we're going to have to be much more proactive in our citizenry, I think, this year moving forward than we have ever been in this country. Because right now, where it stands, it looks like the powers that be don't want us to know the truth. The powers that be don't want us to keep us in a dumbed down position. And the powers that be wants to make sure that, we're just completely oblivious about the direction of this country. McCole checked in and said, we can't afford to have short attention spans when it comes to politics in our government. We must research and do extensive vetting of those who we vote into government offices. I'm all with you, McCole. I just hope that the culture is right there to support that level of citizenry, because right now, people just don't care. We just don't care. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about something that we should all be concerned about, which is history. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the breaking of the color barrier by Jackie Robinson into Major League Baseball. And I wanted to have a conversation about what did that do to the National Negro League? What did that do to Black people having their own independent athletic league? We'll have that conversation up next. So stay with us. A lot to get to in the second 30 of the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice
to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Folks, it's time for us to switch gears from politics to sports. Now, today is a very, very special and important day. Today, we mark the 75th anniversary of the breaking of the color barrier in Major League Baseball by none other than Mr. Jackie Robinson. Folks, 75 years ago today, Mr. Jackie Robinson made his debut as part of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Of course, the story of him has been told over the many, many decades. There has certainly been a great movie about him, 42, that was starred our great late brother Chadwick Boseman, about his story. But one of the things that we have not truly had a real discussion about, and I was really surprised to see that Sports Illustrated did a piece about this issue, is the implications, or rather the impact, that integration has had on Black baseball. Now, before there were, not going to say before, but before Black men were allowed to get into Major League Baseball, the place that many of our people were going to see baseball in the 30s and the 40s was the National Negro League. And I want to bring in my culture crew to talk about this issue. We're joined by Bakari Jones, who is a entrepreneur, and she's also an organizer in the LGBTQIA community, and my brother Sinedu Nkwafor, who is a diversity, inclusion, and equity specialist. But many folks, we are, and I'm gonna just say this: we have not really dug deep into the great history, Bakari and Sinedu, of the National Negro League. There has been, I think, a renewed interest in what was the Black baseball network, but we still are very, like, a lot of the history of the Negro League is still fuzzy, I think, to a lot of people. And to have a conversation about what impact has integration had on Black baseball is a very, very important conversation, because as much as people touted and as much as we have praised Jackie Robinson, Sports Illustrated, when they did this piece, I want to share what was written about this day. Keenan, let's bring up that quote from this Sports Illustrated piece that they did, the impact of of integration of baseball. And they wrote a piece called The Complicated Legacy of Jackie Robinson's Dodgers Debut. It was written by a woman by the name of Andrea Williams. And she wrote this. She said, before and immediately after Robinson's MLB debut 75 years ago today, there was scattered skepticism about the true impact of integration on Black baseball and those who earned their living from the industry. But in 1947, it was hard for many to see past the hopeful image of Robinson clad in his crisp Dodger whites, blue number 42 on his back. It also said in 1947, there was no way to know that 3/4 of a century later, MLB's integration efforts would remain largely symbolic. that even Robinson's commitment to turning the other cheek and smiling through the pain couldn't pry open the door to MLB front offices for more than a handful of token Black hires, land a single Black player in an owner's box, or ensure that Black players would represent more than 8% of the league. Wow. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot to take in. Andrea Williams also talked about that. I want y'all to just kind of rest on that for a minute. But she also talks about the fact that as a result of Jackie Robinson getting and making his debut into Major League Baseball on this day 75 years ago, the National Negro League was still around. The attendance dropped at least by 50% as a result of the Black people turning their attention from the Negro League to the Major Baseball League. And then there were a number of Black teams from everywhere from Newark, New Jersey, and other cities across this country that started to feel the brunt of integration of baseball. And so I wanted to have this discussion because I think that it's a cautionary tale, Bakari, that as much as we laud and praise and hope for some level of acceptance and integration into some spaces, the blowback oftentimes is that it diminishes the efforts that Black people have made to establish something of their own. And I think that's quite fascinating and interesting to me.
I gotta agree with you, Farajii, once again. The devastation, again, from a financial standpoint, to hear that stat about attendance dropping over 50% is startling, right? And just to, again, the economic loss and the further destabilizing of our countries, right? And I did not realize the small, just how microscopic in comparison the actual number of players that went into the MLB coming out of the Negro Leagues actually was. So it definitely makes me, just consider, I think the story of Jackie Robinson is framed as one around greatness, which I don't think anyone disagrees with, but to also learn, for me at least, he wasn't the best player. There's so many different layers and components to this story, but to understand the financial implications of our community for something that, again, comes across as, a visibility, right? Visibility alone with no actual, policy or long-standing impact, one that's not negative, right, within our community. I can't wait to hear what Sinead has to say from the diversity and inclusion angle. So
yeah, that's why I wanted to, and that's why I wanted to have my brother on this, because he's, Sinead, you study history, you are working in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But how do you advocate for this? And I mean, how do you have a proper put this in proper context? Like, yes, we wanted to break a barrier. We wanted to have Black players in white spaces, right? And I'm saying, speaking of what happened in 1947. But there was a cost. There was a real big cost. And even today, if we use this as a model of Black people still breaking the glass ceilings in a lot of different industries, we talked about it a few days ago, how Black women are still underrepresented in tech, business, entertainment, government, how Black women are still not represented in leadership spaces. But there's a cost to Black people taking their talents to other places. There's a cost to that. So how do you have a conversation about diversity and equity and inclusion, knowing that there's a high cost to pay for that?
You know how I feel about integration. And you said we're going to sports, but as we're still in politics, is because when you think about the concept of integration, you ask yourself, was it about the freedom to be or the freedom to be like thee? Because in many spaces when integration came through, a lot of things that were quintessential Black were decimated. And it's very unfortunate that we don't think sometimes that when you say it was this day 75 years ago, okay, ask yourself the day before this 75 years ago and the year before that and the year before that, do you think the people who benefited from us not being in there didn't foresee that, one day these people will make it in? How can we give them, quote unquote, their rights or their freedoms, but still encroach on our, but still make sure we pursue our bottom line? And when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, even in the work that I do, it becomes difficult because how are we to include me without encroaching on who I am as well, and without trying to commercialize what I am for the benefit of business? And that is, unfortunately, when you think about all of these martyrs who participated in integration, you know, that's what ends up happening, because there's always another way to rewrite the story of they didn't do well enough. I mean, we heard this when Obama became president, where many people thought that, you know, you gave up. And that's the hard line to toe when you think about integration, because many could ask, you know, if the Negro League suffered 50%, you know, decline in this and that, or they became amalgamated or whatever, what have you, then is it that we really wanted to be integrated, or did we actually just want the rights to be considered like everyone else?
I think that's the question right there. So are we talking about really wanting to integrate into a system, or we just simply want to be seen and respected as human beings as part of the system? I think that's the big question. I think that's one of the big questions facing us, in whether it's in sports, politics, or other spaces. Like, we have to be very, very clear. There has to be some clarity on our end and as to what our intentions are. And I think that's a great question. Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro League Baseball Museum, he said, quote, "Jackie Robinson's success in the big leagues was a tremendous sign of progress, but as I tell our guests when they visit the Negro League Museum, there's always a cost for progress." He said Black businesses paid a dear cost. There was an entire workforce that ended up losing their jobs. Black businesses paid a dear cost because of the demise of the Negro League. And if you haven't checked in, and Lana, who is one of our loyal watchers, she put it in the chat, check out the Negro League Museum in Kansas City and see and learn that history. But to Mr. Kendrick's point, there was a great deal there was a great loss in this, Bakari. There was a great loss in the fact that, you know, in Kansas City, let me just share with you some of the cities we talked about. Kansas City, Newark, New Jersey. You had the Kansas City Monarchs, the Newark Eagles, Chicago, New York, the Montreals. You had the Brooklyn, then you had the smaller junior world, you had smaller leagues. I mean, you had these Black people, and I thought this was interesting that Andrea Williams of Sports Illustrated put it out there. Black people were going to baseball. We were always been fans of baseball. We were always supporting the games. But when Branch Rickey had this idea for this experiment, it just shook up everything. It shook up everything. And the crazy part is, and I didn't know this until we started to do the research, they said that Jackie Robinson wasn't even considered to be one of the best in the game at that time. That there was Miss Williams put in her article, she said there was a general consensus that he wasn't the best. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to throw shade on his legacy, but she said, quote, two other Black players, pitchers Johnny Wright and Roy Partlow, both former Negro League standouts, had played alongside Robinson that year, and both were demoted to the Class C Royals of Quebec during the season. For all the talk about whether Robinson was the most talented black player in the Negro Leagues and the general consensus that he wasn't, his ability to perform under the racism and high scrutiny of that first year in white baseball seemed to confirm that he at least had the proper comportment. He knew how to deal with the pressure and the pain. Now, that didn't take away from his, he still had great stats, his batting average and all of those stats were still there, but there was something in him that made him eligible and lack of a better word, that qualified him to be in his role, Bakari, where he could take on all of that scrutiny. He could take on all of that criticism to a degree that he could still perform and still go out there and still make a huge statement. But I thought that was interesting. That was interesting that this experiment was just not about baseball. Mm-hmm. This experiment from Branch Rickey was about the type of black man. And I still think that is the case today, which is funny that black people, some black people are allowed in certain spaces while others not necessarily because of what their qualifications are, but because of who they are. And I don't know, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Bakari, I don't know how to fully process that. Like if you too black, you may not get in these spaces. If you too white, you gotta like, as Sinead said, you gotta toe the line of being just enough. And I don't know how we would, I don't know how to process that, to be honest with you.
I don't need to, Farajii, to be honest. I think trying to figure out, and I just read it as like, who's palatable to white folks. That's essentially what is being said. At least that's my interpretation, which I think is dangerous. We talk about it, I think when we start to get into the idea of respectability politics. And again, like I said, I never followed Jackie Robinson's career that closely, but to learn that he wasn't the best player and to know that respectability politics, or those respectability politics, sort of weighed out more than his actual athletic prowess is. Yeah. I know you didn't mean it in a shady way.
No, I'm not saying it to be shady. No, we know that.
I know. I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not trying to imply this, but I'm like, man, the way that feels about the scenario. You know what I mean? And it just makes me wonder how conscious or aware Jackie Robinson was in that. You know what I mean? In that moment, in that space, and whether or not he was essentially being, how much of a pawn he was essentially being used for. How, you know what I mean? Like, what other game was being played outside of just baseball? So,
yeah. Absolutely. And you know what though? And I'm glad that he was the man that he was, because he was a man of very high character. You know what I mean? He had morals, he had value, he had, his beautiful wife, Rachel, who is 99 years old. They had their son. I mean, he is still a man that's worthy to be honored and to be looked up to. It's just interesting, like you said, how that respectability politics plays. And it's so sad, man. It's so sad that we give, and I'm saying this as a black man, that when we have talents and skills, Sinead, that we just can't get in certain spaces just based on talents and skills. There's always an agenda at play, right? To use us. And I heard this was part of the conversation that we even had about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? There was always something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's never just enough for us to be great. It's like, we got to get scrutinized to the full degree, like knowing our personal politics. Like, so where do you stand on this? And where do you stand on that? And you know what I mean? Like, it can't just be our qualifications by itself. That can't stand alone.
And I was thinking the same thing, Farajii. All her, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson also being applauded for her composure under the scrutiny, right? So it's essentially the same sort of accolade that was being given to Jackie Robinson in this instance. So I think that's interesting as well.
Yeah. Sinead, what's your take?
Yeah, like, it's so funny when y'all say Ketanji. That's what I was thinking about this entire time. It's this, when I just did a quick Google search on the word, integrated, defined as with various parts or aspects, linked or combined. And I think we use that word wrong, because it's not integration, because integration speaks about a level of unification. But if it's just integrated something that was viewed as secondary into something that is primary, that's more of amalgamation. Like, and that plays in its parts in so many ways.
Wait a minute, hold on, Shanae. I want to make sure that people didn't get past that. You're saying that integration is based on pretty much we're on equal footing, but we're uniting in uniting, coming together.
Exactly.
But when you're saying that this wasn't integration, this was an amalgamation, and you're saying amalgamation is defined as how again?
Amalgamation is more defining as one thing swallowing another, basically, for lack of better words. And I know we've studied English enough to know that, we like to use words that are synonyms, but sometimes only certain words correctly identify the situation. Because think about it. It was Black folk, for instance, who integrated, quote unquote, into the society of freedom that white people were already living in. White people didn't have to integrate into anything. They just had to put up with the new folks in the classroom, the new folks at their business, et cetera, et cetera. There wasn't any great prolific change that they were now seeing. And I think when you think of the position of, Jackie Robinson saying there was people that are better than him and blah, 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 it made me think of Sister Ketanji Brown Jackson, because it was this concerted effort to speak on how clean she is, how intelligent she is, and how overqualified she is. But my question is, when you look at how basic Kavanaugh is and more basic Amy Coney Barrett is, you are now setting a standard that pushes the idea that it's a certain type of your kind that can maybe be allowed in, which in turn divides a group that is already a minority that is trying to, quote unquote, integrate. Because now you separate that group with, well, I was able to make it into this, but you weren't. And it becomes a dichotomy of thought. Because my question is, for example, if we look at the Ketanji situation, what if she did have a couple of things on her record? Does that now make her less of a candidate?
Right.
So these are those type of questions that I think when you start to, now in hindsight, which is 2020, when you start to think about it more, you start to see that integration and the idea of all of this, there was a lot of insidiousness in that concept. And it now can only be studied backwards, because it's like, now you put a gentleman, you just said that he wasn't the best player, but he was the best player for somebody else's game. If you catch, that's why I say that's not integration, that's amalgamation.
Look, we're going to have to stop the conversation there, but I hope that people don't look at this conversation as if we're throwing shade on Jackie Robinson on this historic day.
No shade.
I'm saying that from the most genuine space of my heart. This is not about that. I want to know, because I know my brother was strong beyond measure. And I think that as time went on, at different points in his life, he started to realize, like, yeah, this was a great opportunity, but there was a cost to it. And I think that it's important for 2022 history and culture that we don't sugarcoat what really happened in history, because we can learn something just in what happened 75 years ago. We can look at it and say, damn, that's still being done today in 2022. That level of, quote unquote, amalgamation and under this guise of integration, I mean, that's still happening in 2022. And we just got to be mindful that those tactics are used especially when it comes to pushing somebody else's agenda. And so, I my heart and prayers continue to go out to the Robinson family, but more importantly, we need to continue to look up to Brother Jackie, but let's not forget that he came from a group of people from the National Negro League. They came from there were players like Jackie Robinson, and in some cases better. So we can't forget that part of the history as much as we talk about one man that one man is a part of a community, is a part of baseball players and athletes, and we should never forget about them. Folks, I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll have a conversation about love and relationships. So, Brother Sinedu, we thank you so much for joining us for this first hour, and we look forward to bringing you back on, dear brother.
Peace.
Peace. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be checking in with relationship expert LaDon Black to talk about what everybody has been discussing, which is Cam Newton. What did he really say? What he meant? And how do we learn a lesson from it? That conversation is up next. Stay tuned. It is happening on The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, we wanted to switch gears to have a different conversation. Everybody's been talking about what Panthers quarterback Cam Newton has to say about a variety of things. And it came up that he talked about what the roles of women should be in relationship. It also came up where I think he put his foot in the mouth. Not talking about male-female relationships. He put his foot in the mouth about women in sports. But that's not here nor there. But y'all, if you listen to the interview, he said it was funny that women are asking him about running routes. He's like, it's funny. It's just funny a woman asking me about routes. I think that's more problematic. But we're not going to talk about that at this particular moment. I wanted to have this conversation about Cam Newton, what he said about how women should be when in a relationship with a man. I want you to take a listen to this, and then we'll have our conversation with relationship expert LaDon Black. Check this out.
A perfect example of what a man was in my life by my father. My parents has been together for 36, 37 years now, and it's a beautiful thing. I grew up in a 3-parent household, my mom, my father, and my grandmother. And I knew what a woman was, not a bad bitch.
Okay, what's the difference?
A woman.
Okay.
A bad bitch is a person who's just, you know, girl, I'm a bad bitch. You know, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I look the part, but I don't act the part.
Okay.
You know, and it's a lot of women who are bad bitches. And I say bitches in a way, not to degrade a woman, but just to go off the aesthetic of what they deem is a boss chick. Now, a woman for me is handling your own, but knowing how to cater to a man's needs, right? And I think a lot of times when you get that aesthetic of like, I'm a boss bitch, like I'm a this, I'm a that, no, baby, like, but you can't cook.
Okay.
You don't know when to be quiet. You don't know how to allow a man to lead.
they got Cam into some hot water. So I didn't want to talk about this just amongst myself and my culture crew. I wanted to bring in an expert. So we brought it back, Miss LaDon Black, who's going to give us some insight onto this. And we're also joined again by Bakari Jones. LaDon, thank you so much for checking in with us. How are you this afternoon?
I am wonderful, and I want to talk about this. You know I want to talk about this. There's so much there. So much good stuff.
All right, so Cam, he made a differentiation between a bad B. I don't like to use the word, so I'm going to just say a bad B. Mm-hmm. And then he says a woman. So that's the first thing. And then second thing is like a woman knows how to do certain things. She has a certain, I'm going to say certain set of skills. Mm-hmm. Now look, let me tell you, it's now because people put them out on social media. They were like, oh my God, Cam needs to get the hell out. Cam needs, and I'm like, okay, how, when we hear people say things, and I don't want to take this man's view out of context, what is the proper view of what you're of what he's saying? What's the context that we should take this in, LaDon?
You know what? I have no problem with what Cam said. He has a right to feel that way. If that's the way he views the women that are in his life and those are his expectations, that's fine. And I think people would not have gotten upset if he had said, look, this is what I want for myself. I want a woman who's like my mom, a woman who's like my grandmother, who cooks, who's traditional, who listens to her man. I don't think it would have caught fire the way it did. But for him to bring that to all relationship situations, I think that's where he got in trouble.
So you can't apply that criteria to all relationships.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's like me meeting a man and saying, you got to build me a house, because isn't that what men do? Aren't men handy? Build me a house. Don't buy me one. Build me one. And I'm talking to a dude who's an accountant who's like, I don't even know how to use a hammer, but I can take care of you and take care of your kids and be good. So it's ridiculous. I think we need to get to a point, especially when we have these platforms and, he's a superstar. He has a huge platform. I think sometimes we need to really sort of drill it down to, this is what works for me. This is what I feel may work for other people, but truly this is what I desire. And I think if he had wrapped it in that framework, people wouldn't have run with it the way they did.
Yeah, because he kind of said it like definitively, this is what a woman is. Now, right. The fact of that he's saying, LaDon, that a woman should know when to stay quiet. And Bakari.
Look, your heart hurt for him because you knew it was coming.
Look, LaDon, the moment that man said, because he doesn't have, it's hard, I think only certain men can say certain things because you look at the whole package, right? If a man or a woman says something about what if a man says what a woman should be doing, the first thing people are going to do is cast judgment and be like, wait a minute, hold on, man, who are you? But and I think the same thing for women says what a man should be doing. So should we not have a conversation about roles? And if not, because I know roles can differ from relationship to relationship. My wife and I, we talk about this all the time. When you look at, let's go for the number one target in the Black community, Will and Jada, right? And their roles in relationship, Ricard, I had to bring him up, Ricard. But when we look at those roles, like we really don't, and I'm saying in our community, I don't think we respect the fact that people's relationships are what they want them to be according to the people that's involved in that relationship, that they determine the parameters, they determine how the dynamics of that relationship.
And I think that's very true. I mean, the thing is, we're all raised with traditional roles. Even if you didn't have a mom and a dad in your home, you got it at school, you got it at church, you got it from a movie, a TV show, you understood that a man is, traditionally supposed to be a provider. A woman is supposed to be the one who maintains the home. It's advanced in the 21st century where she has to maintain the home and maintain a career and be educated on top of that.
Yeah.
And so there are traditional roles. My car breaks down, I'm supposed to call my dad. I'm not supposed to call necessarily my mom. Somebody messes with me in the street, I'm supposed to call my dad. So you have those roles. We're all raised with them. But anyone who's been in any relationship, I'm not going to even say that you have to be married or be in a long-term relationship. You realize that sometimes those roles get a little gray. You know, if he's a better cook than I am, then he's the one who cooks. If he's a better cleaner than I am, he's the one who cleans. If I happen to make more money, then I'm the one who pays the bulk of the bills. And I think that we need to get to a point where we see that those types of relationships can be successful as well. Yeah. And the thing is, Cam has to be real careful talking about traditional roles, because easily, you know, anyone can come out and say, well, traditionally, you're supposed to be married to the mother of your children. He's not. So, right. I mean, so he's violating a traditional role. So right. There's a lot of things out there that can be considered.
And then, you know, Bakari, first, I want to make sure that you join this conversation as well, because I think the other part of it is that we are also in a space and in a time, LaDon, where relationships don't just include a man and a woman. There are same-sex relationships. There are relationships. I mean, people are having all different types of relationships nowadays. So it's I see why some people were offended that he has this hard, fast rules, not understanding that relationships have evolved over time and that people are in very different places and understandings about relationships.
He also has to understand that he's a man with means. So women are going to approach him in a different way. A woman may be more willing to be submissive or to be quiet or to not make major decisions because he's the man with the money. He's the man with the fame. And so I think in any situation where we're giving advice or giving our thoughts, we also have to sort of look at what makes us different from a typical person. And he has means, he has celebrity. So a woman who's interested in him may roll herself back a little bit just to be part of that lifestyle. He needs to consider that.
And I think that was the part about it for me, Bakari, when he started talking about the bad B. And I'm like, there's only a small segment of women that refer to themselves as a bad B. And when they do, I mean, unfortunately, I think there's a quote unquote, you know, you have this prototype or you have this misperception of a woman because she's a bad B. You know, I mean, we hear Meg Thee Stallion, for example, using that terminology. Lil Kim has used that, Nicki Minaj. Those type of women who express themselves in that way, we've heard it. We don't hear Lauryn Hill, for example. I'm just using her as an example.
Right.
You know, saying I'm a bad B. You know what I mean? And it just goes to show you, like, his world is limited in terms of being exposed to women who don't see themselves like it's either you a real woman or you a bad B. And it's like,
yeah,
that's it.
Well, that's Farajii, that's kind of where my mind went when I heard this, which I feel like I've been under a pop culture rock. So I'm like, what he said? But it's a couple of things. One, aesthetic and attitude are two different things. So he kind of immediately conflated the aesthetic, which he specifically said the aesthetic of a bad B, which I'm like, dress in a certain way doesn't mean you're automatically in the attitude or persona of what we consider in pop culture the bad B. That's one thing. And then the other is, for me, I think, you know, we have traditionally referred to them as gender roles because these were the specific life skills taught to men and then the specific set of life skills taught to women that, you know, pretty much kind of just leaves our trans and non-binary brothers and sisters out of the conversation altogether. But this really, in my opinion, boils down to the life skills. So the segment of people, to LaDon's point, in Cam's world, right, the women that he's been engaging with have trouble or limited culinary skills, limited listening skills, and apparently limited skills on being able to potentially read the room. I think we can make that same observation about Brother Cam in this instance, not being able to necessarily understand the difference in some of the word choice. And I think it, you know, to me, I'm like, ooh, you getting into like the Kevin Samuels territory where you are just sort of creating this like blanket statement and degrading Black women, which I can't be a part of. So for me, you know, it's unfortunate. I hope that he is in the space where he's able to kind of just take a step back. And I do think that he's speaking specifically to the type of relationship that he wants to engage in, relationships he wants to engage in when, with LaDon's point, right? His mother the women in his family, essentially, right? That he has those close relationships with. But I think that the danger becomes, and when you see someone that has a platform this size making these statements, and a lot of them are rooted in very dangerous patriarchal culture that says, if you are a woman, these are the only life skills that you have. You must be submissive. You must know how to cook, and you must know how to shut up and let a man lead, right? So those are the things that he said overtly, but the implication of those same statements are very dangerous for women, especially, right? I'm not in any way, shape, or form putting him in the category of somebody that is violent domestically. But these are the types of things that we see as the seeds for that type of negative behavior, number one. And then again, we pigeonhole people in spaces where we say, if you have this genitalia, these are the only life skills that you have access to. You have that genitalia, never mind our intersex kinfolk, right? Like, so it just is very limited. It's super binary. And I don't know that it's very helpful in a larger context. I think if he were just having that conversation with some of his loved ones at their kitchen table, y'all do what y'all want to do. Once we bring it into a national platform, we have to start unpacking it the way that we would hope, other people would, for us to be able to see and understand some of the nuance and what's actually being said.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Thread, because Janelle checked in and said, look, Cam sounds very intimidated by non-traditional progressive women. She said he deserves every flame of fire that comes his way. Some men like to judge, but can't stand up to the same judgment. Common did this too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that this is, and I think that and I've seen a lot of men, particularly brothers, who felt very like they had to defend some level of manhood. And I think, LaDon, that for a lot of men, it's scary that we're in a place where women are asserting their independence. I'm not gonna say a lot, but I think some brothers are just really scared. They're like, I don't know how to change. I don't know how to make the shift between what I have been taught and conditioned to believe about myself and my role versus what is happening in my world around me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how to quote unquote adapt to this or be, accommodate to all of these evolving changes. I don't know how to deal with a woman who is progressive, who have more progressive views about womanhood and manhood than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like for some men, they just like, well, bump it. I'm gonna just have this hard, fast attitude.
Dig my heels in. Dig my heels in.
You know what I mean? It's because, and then if I come across any woman that doesn't fit that mold, man, I'm gonna just move her out the way, just totally not listen to her. And I'm wondering, LaDon, as a woman, I mean, how do we break through that? Because men we have to grow up too. And I know some guys be like, man, Farajii, sometimes, you sound like, because I'm trying to understand. I'm serious. I don't know it. I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to understand. So how do we break through all of that, LaDon?
We have to be realistic. We no longer live in a time where necessarily one person working can cover a whole household. If you have childcare costs, if your kids go to private school, if you want to live in something bigger than a shed, both people have to work. I mean, that's just the truth. Right. So some things have to change because logically they just can't keep going the same way they've traditionally gone. Right. Then also we have to really sort of tap into, especially guys, they like to talk about what grandma did and what ma did. But do you really know your mother's story? Do you really know grandma's story? Do you know about what she had to put up with to stay married for 37 years? Do you know the sacrifices she may have made? Was she really happy about all the house cleaning and cooking and coming in from work and having to do another shift? Was she really happy about all that stuff? Or was she just a good parent who kept that away from her children and just pushed through, as a lot of women do? So those are the things that I challenge men with who don't want to bend, who don't want to adjust. And then the final piece would be, do you want a successful relationship? Do you want a happy home? Then sometimes you have to take on roles. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do or think is necessarily your role. I mean, we have to open ourselves up to new definitions of relationships and marriages and things like that. And that our relationships don't necessarily, I can't talk. Our relationships don't necessarily look like our parents, and that's okay.
So we got to be okay with that. We have to be okay with the fact that our relationships are going to be different. And I think that's uncharted territory for a lot of people, Adon. I think that that's one of the scary elements of this new space of where we are with relationships, because relationships was already, for lack of a better word, tricky to get the roles right, the traditional stuff right. Now we're in a space where it was like, wait a minute, I got to think about this and I got to think about that. Now I'm in a whole different space. And I always tell people, you know, there are very few books, I'm going to say very, very few books out there to teach us about the proper relationship between a man and a woman, or the proper relationships in general, whether same sex or other relationships. Like, there are very few places that people can go to learn about understanding the changes and the evolution of people in a relationship.
Man.
And I think that scares a lot of people. I think we're kind of like winging it and I'm sure you probably get calls and texts and emails and LaDon all the time. People like, I don't know what the hell to do anymore. Right. I don't know what to do. Like, you know, my wife and I had this conversation just yesterday, and I was just sharing with her. I was like, you know what? Marriages and relationships, long-term relationships, they don't last because for some reason we don't think that the person that we met at the very beginning of the relationship will ever change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like, if you've been married,
yes,
you know what I'm saying? And I'm not talking about just like a year. I'm talking about some time where circumstances and money and move and children and you got all this stuff happening. That's going to change a person.
It is.
Farajii. Can I just got to chime in. I've been like,
go ahead, please.
I am like, I have my thing maybe 30 minutes left of my first listen to Bell Hooks' The Will to Change. And the full title is The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I work in, you know, as you shared on the show before, an LGBTQ community with a lot of folks that operate outside of the traditional gender binary, right? So just male and female, folks that are non-binary, that are queer, that are trans. And one of the things I like about this book is that Bell Hooks is talking about what a lot of masculine folks, not just men, but men and masculine people, masculine identified people, which can very well include straight women who, you know, we just put in the category of also just being masculine, want the closing a gap with like emotional labor. And I think that that's one of the major changes and pivots that I think we're going to see and have to see in our relationships moving forward for them to survive, is not only to LaDon's point and to your point, right? We got to have two breadwinners the way capitalism is set up, but now we also have to share some of this emotional labor. And I think that that's one of the pieces that Cam was touching on. When we talk about women staying in a woman's place and cooking it, that's meaning that also is, again, what you're saying without saying is that the woman, the feminine person, is who's supposed to do that emotional labor. Mm-hmm. And I think we know from the trauma and the grief and the anger, the anguish that we've experienced as a community across all the genders, right? Across the full spectrum of the Black community, we got to share some of this emotional labor because all of us are in some way sort of against the ropes. So I wanted to offer that is The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. And it's been blowing my mind about the things that we say and don't say to men, to boys. So yeah, so that's one of the places I feel like that's one resource that I just wanted to offer up.
I love that. Bakari, I love that you brought that into the conversation because I think that, again, going back to that traditional role of Don, people think that the woman is emotional, the man is supposed to be physical. And like Black men in particular, and I say this all the time, and I tell my son, don't be afraid to feel. Mm-hmm. And I love that you just brought that point up, Bakari, about sharing the emotional labor. I'm an emotional guy. And I know that, and I love that, and I'm not going to be I'm unapologetic about it. I'm an emotional guy. My wife be like, "You're so emotional." I am. You know, but you know, it's like when you're trying to break out, and this is not on some political quote unquote, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be a political feminist or something along those lines, but it's just that I realize that we have done so much damage to ourselves, LaDon, because we haven't learned what true masculinity is. That includes emotion, being in touch with our emotion, and therefore we haven't been able to get in touch with the emotion of our partner. And I know that has led to domestic violence, emotional abuse, and other trauma because we haven't been liberated from these type of misperceptions of what manhood should be.
Exactly. And to Bakari's point too, in a lot of, if you want to consider them traditional relationships, women carry the emotional baggage of the relationship. They feel like they have to keep everybody happy. Yep. They have to keep everybody on an even keel. You know, if somebody's having a bad day, I have to fix it. And so what we're running into now is a generation of women who are saying, look, I have the same right to the freedoms that you enjoy in this relationship. I have the same rights to be happy. I have the same rights to expect you to be emotionally connected to me. You can no longer just marry me and forget that I'm there. You know, I want a partner. I want a true partnership. And I think when we have men having these types of conversations in spaces, I think what they don't realize is a lot of the things that you desire, her cooking, her being attentive, her being soft, her being there for you, those things come out of being respected. Those things come out of you being a true partner. And those things come out of you carrying some of the weight. And sometimes women are just frustrated because they carry all the weight.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
LaDon, you know I could talk to you forever about this stuff. I'm serious, I can, because I'm a student first, right? So I know that I've been so, my wife teaches me things. I'm listening to other women. I'm listening to Bakari today. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to what our women watchers are saying. And like, I think that we all have to be open to be fed. And I think for Cam Newton, like it's unfortunate, and I'm happy that he put himself out there because now he realized, hopefully, that he needs to kind of grow up a little bit just see.
He's not.
Okay, all right, fine then. The hell with him.
He's gonna keep playing in his pond.
Look, we got a lot of work to do, LaDon. So that means that I'm gonna have to keep bringing you back.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
I appreciate it. LaDon Black, author and relationship expert. LaDon, thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Thanks for having me, Farajii.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about Chris Rock and his brothers. Oh, my gosh. Tony's talked about getting some type of violent payback. Now Kenny is talking about getting some violent payback. My question is, should they just stop at this point? I mean, should they just simply stop? I'm going to share with you the latest with Kenny Rock and what he had to say about the infamous Oscar slap and how he would like to address it. So stay with it. That conversation is up next. Also, I got the last word for the week. Stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Wow. Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. I just got to say, I really enjoyed that conversation that we just had with our relationship expert, LaDon Black and Bakari. I really enjoyed that. I really felt like, and I think that a lot of you were checking in, just looking at the comments from Facebook and from YouTube. Man, just to have mature conversations. Like, I understand that there have been a number of people that try to take conversations like that and just kind of go into a different space. But I felt like just in the time that we had, that was a very, very mature conversation. So I'm grateful to both my sisters for being a part of the discussion. Bakari, I want to bring you back into it. I'm just grateful for you so much. And I'm so happy that you and LaDon were able to join me for that discussion, because I feel like something special just happened. And I don't, you know what I mean? Like we're getting into a much more mature place and having these discussions beyond just the
low
surface stuff. Yeah, the low vibration. Loved how you said it. Yep. The low vibration stuff. So it's important. We plan to have more discussions like that, but I just want to say thank you for bringing in that, especially that great resource from Bell Hooks, to understand and to expand our view of what masculinity is and what love and relationship looks like in this day and age. And it's a beautiful thing. Speaking of relationships, I wanted to have this brief discussion about, what we're seeing with the brothers of Chris Rock. Now, we've been talking about this story of course, everybody knows about the slap, but more importantly, we've been talking about what Tony Rock has said at a recent comedic performance that he had. Now, his brother Kenny has gone on record to say that he signed up for celebrity boxing, and that, when asked, he said he'd be willing to challenge anybody in the ring, but he would certainly love to take Will Smith on one-on-one. And I get it. Bakari, I get it. No, I'm serious. I get it, right? I have brothers and sisters, so I get it. But then I'm like, okay, all right. Should you stop pushing? Should you stop pushing?
Immediately, Farajii.
Pushing this for this payback against Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like Kenny just said this before. Now he's saying the slap eats at him, and now he's like, I'll be willing to take Will Smith on, and the only talking I'll do is with these hands.
Farajii, again, to just carry that same through line, if you will, of low vibration. Picture it. Kenny says, we've created so much attention. The outpouring of attention and love for my brother has been tremendous. We want to buy these tickets. The proceeds are going to fill in the blank cause that best aligns, right? It could be alopecia for Jay. It could be so many different ways that this energy and this attention could be leveraged to further support us. But it's instead, he's claiming, and I would never attempt, and I think it would be futile to even, attempt to assess anyone's level of emotional distress, right? I don't want to make any assumptions about how distraught Brother Kenny actually is. But if Chris Rock is still not talking about it, I think it's fair to say you're not as distraught as Brother Chris is. So maybe find the nearest seat and politely crisscross applesauce, and just to me, I feel like at what point, similar with, right, like with Brother Jackie Robinson, what is this diverting us from? What is this taking us away from? And if you're not using this attention, like I said, all right, y'all, we've all had a good run at it. We're going to now use this energy for a cause, for a good cause. We're going to redirect that energy, change the low vibration, raise it up a little bit, get a much higher vibration going on here, and redirect the funds, the dollars, the attention. What are we doing? I just feel like it's a distraction.
It's sad. Look, let me tell you, my man, Brother King Lee said they're trying to extend their 10 minutes of fame. King.
Couldn't agree more.
Could not agree more. Check this out. They also said the infamous Kiki says, yes, this is just wrong and desperate.
It's given desperate.
It's like, here's my problem with it. Y'all must have been living under a rock, because for the past couple of weeks, there have been a number of thought pieces that have been written. Of course, Black media has been speaking on it. Social media has been speaking on it. Mm-hmm. That the issue is much deeper. That the slap was just an effect of a larger cause. Mm-hmm. And it's like, y'all want to, and you said it just a moment ago, Bakari, like you want to respond in this low vibrational place. I just want to beat him up. Mm-hmm. Like, bro. And then to your point again, Bakari, because this is exactly how I was feeling. If your brother ain't saying nothing, then why are you talking?
Yeah.
Like, if that happened to my brother, and I have an older brother, if that happened to my brother, I'm going to talk to my older brother and say, hey, bro, do you want me to say something?
Right.
Do you want us to? No, man, I'm still processing. All right, cool. I'm going to just let this be. Like, what are you doing?
That's what you're supposed to do.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? Now it does, to infamous Kiki's point, it does look desperate. Nobody was talking Tony Rock. Nobody was talking Kenny Rock. Now it's like, oh, now let me just get this. Let me sign up for celebrity boxing. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I can get real. We can go very low and be like, come on, man. The man had enough. The man had enough guts to walk up on stage and slap a man. You don't think he? I mean, you don't think he got the guts?
It's never going to happen. I think the possibility of Will Smith actually getting in the ring with him is so far beyond the possibility. It just makes you look even more desperate in this instance. So again, what are you really going after? You know, what's the end goal here?
And I think that's the point that the brothers are missing. That instead of putting it out there that you want to, like Tony, and I think Tony's response was one of the worst response. And if somebody, I don't care what Tony has to say, even if he heard this, I'm gonna say it to his face. Tony, you had the worst response. You called the man's wife a B.
Yeah.
Then you talking about every time I see you, it'll be pop. Man, sit your ass down, man. It's unfortunate.
It is.
Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, two high-profile, very influential, very, I would say, important men that have shaped Black and culture. It's a sad situation, so we know that. So why are you just constantly, y'all just constantly just want to, like there's no growth. There was no say, hey, look, you know, we're going to talk about this. I wonder if any one of these brothers say, look, man, can we have a bigger conversation about mental health? Or can we have a bigger conversation about violence in white spaces? I mean, nobody is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I get it. I trust and believe. I get it. You want to feel like, man, nobody going to bother my brother, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Boom, boom, boom. But
yeah.
And I wanted to bring this part of the conversation up because, again, I think this is an opportunity for us to look at this situation, and then we have to be intentional because we're on the outside of things, Bakari. We have to be intentional about how we should handle certain public moments like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're serious about bringing some healing after this moment, then we have to be intentional. And I hope people in both Kenny's camp and Tony's camp is saying, look, just, bro, it's not worth it. At this point, the situation, I mean, even Kenny went on to say that, even with Will Smith being banned for 10 years, he said, we're going to have to watch the Academy because they're going to try to let us slip. They may try to let him slip in 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. We got to make sure they do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Have you been watching the Academy since then?
Right. It's tough. It's tough. And I think, conversations around, and I don't purport to be an expert in the space, but what I know about restorative justice is that, it's important to really center the desires of the person that's considered the victim. And in this instance, I think it's even more complicated because you have both Jada and Chris Rock as victims, so just for lack of a better term, right, in this instance. And so it really is about what do they want. So, we're saying jokingly, like, if your brother didn't say nothing, then you should let it ride. But what do they want? And if they essentially have, want peace or say, hey, I want this to end, I want it to come out of the zeitgeist, right? Or whatever it is that they desire, that they choose, that's what we should be honoring. And to me, I just don't, I think in that clip, the reporter that's interviewing his brother says, did you speak to him? And he's like, no, we didn't talk about it. So it's literally just all your own personal agenda. So I think that, that level of anger, trying to frame it as it being this sort of righteous anger on his brother's behalf, I think that's false. So I feel like, listen, if you can't find a way to redirect celebrity dollars in a way that's constructive to Black people, mute.
That's all it is. That's all it is. And you just gotta meet you. And my final point about this, Bakari, is like, bro, I don't know who's pumping your head up?
Right.
Somebody's pumping your head up, makes say, hey man, you know you could probably trust and believe, Kenny. You ain't on Will Smith's radar at all. You're not on his radar at all. Like, he's not even thinking about that man had, and I don't know if you knew this, Bakari, he had a movie that was going to be based on his book, his best-selling book, Will. That was going to be coming out. I think he got another project that was supposed to drop. He was talking about 2 major projects at least right now. Of course, he's still doing the work with Bel Air, the television show. So, I mean, he's still got all these projects that are up in the air right now. They're in a state of jeopardy. You know what I mean? He still probably is mentally and emotionally dealing with all of this stuff. Chris is still probably trying to figure this shit out. Like, it's like, bro, just let it alone. Like, sometimes just let situations be. Yeah. So both of these black men can find a way to and process all that has happened, because it ain't good for Chris. I'm sure that people are like, man, Chris, you a punk because you didn't respond, and boom, boom, boom. He got to deal with that. I mean, it's just so many dynamics and factors on this situation. And the last thing you need is your family just going off at the mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, folks, please. I'll tell you, look, man, tell my brother, man, shut the hell up. I'll be like, man, shut the up, bro.
That's it.
Like, shut up. Like, you're not adding nothing to this.
Nothing.
Don't talk about it. I'll respond when I'm ready.
That's it.
But shut up.
Mute it.
And then you talk about I'm defending my brother. No, bro, you trying to get some money.
That's it.
Tell me I'm defending my brother. No, you trying to exploit a situation that's a real blemish on black men and black arts and culture.
Yeah.
And that's not cool. That's not cool. So to Kenny and Tony, sit your ass down, man. Sit your ass down. Nobody wants to see you. Nobody can catch these hands and nominate. Sit your ass. Sit down.
It's not.
God.
It's not.
My goodness. Bakari, I appreciate you, sis.
Thank you for having me, brother.
I thank you so much. I hope you have a great, great weekend. I know it is a very spiritual weekend for a lot of people. Passover, Easter, Ramadan. So I just hope and pray that you have a great weekend. But we thank you so much for your insights and contributions this week. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, sis.
Sounds good. Thank you, brother. Praying for your family to have a good weekend too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we got to take a final pause. When we come back, the last word. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, it has been such a dynamic week of just very, very important and big conversations. And I am just super grateful that we've been having these discussions. And even today, like I just shared with you, looking at the conversation around masculinity, roles, and love and relationships. And, you know, I'm thinking back to the conversation that we had with Dante Winslow, the composer, the orchestra for the Oscars, and how he saw the world. I'm thinking about the conversation that we had yesterday with Pierce Godwin from the Listen First Project. And all of these conversations that we have been having, especially this week, one of the things that remains true, which is this idea that we should all be ready to step out of our comfort zones and to do something that we may not have thought of doing, something that we didn't think was revolutionary, which is to start having faith in ourselves. This is the time of year. We know that today Jews across this country and around the world are celebrating Passover. We know that this weekend Christians will be celebrating Easter and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. And we also know that it is also this time for Muslims that are celebrating and continue to celebrate the Ramadan, which is a way to celebrate the great revelation of the Holy Quran. But all of these great spiritual moments are happening at the same time in 2022. And it's not by happenstance. This is not by coincidence. That in any other time that you have all of these great moments that are taking place, people are looking for closeness. They're looking for nearness to the divine, to the creator. But at the same time, as much as we're seeking and pursuing for closeness and nearness to the divine, I think the big thing that we should see in that journey is that we should be looking for closeness and nearness to love and faith in ourselves. That we should know that we do have the power to change, that we should know that we do have the ability to make our lives better, that we don't have to look at institutions or governments, or we don't have to look at celebrities or outside of ourselves, that we should have the faith of what's inside. And if you say, Farajii, I don't have that faith right now, I don't see myself. It's hard to have faith for something outside of yourself if you don't have the seed of that same level of faith right on the inside. How can you believe that a power outside of yourself is going to save you from yourself if you don't even know the power that you have? This is why I'm asking that as we have these conversations and as we take place in all of this spiritual rejuvenation, as we take these very important steps to making ourselves whole and healed again, that we do not lose out on the number one goal, which is don't see yourself as being unworthy. Don't see yourself as not having value. You have value. I have value. We have value to change. We have value to create a new reality. We have value to think. We have value. And if you keep in mind, folks, that you got the faith in yourself that is going to serve as the guiding light through these dark moments, through these uncertain times that we're living in, trust and believe you're going to be able to get through. You're going to be able to win. We are going to be able to make the progress that we want to make as a people, as a community, and as a country. We're going to make a difference. We can make a difference, but it starts with having faith in yourself first. So I hope that over the weekend, and as we go into the new week, God willing, that you will be willing to see, and don't let anybody tell you that you are less than. Don't let anybody drop a seed in your head to tell you that you're not worthy. Don't let anybody just tell you that you can't do something. Start working on getting those negative energy and getting that negative force out of yourself. On Saturday, on Sunday, take time for yourself. We often talk about self-care. Take time to care for yourself in a way that is healthy, that is productive, that is enlightening, and that will edify your spirit, your mind, and your vision of how you see yourself. And trust and believe. Once we start there, folks, then guess what? You start to overcome the little shortcomings, and you might start to overcome the big demons within yourself. The world will soon be turned around. You can overcome what happens in the world because we will all be in a place where we understand that we all got the power, but the real power starts with us getting closer to ourselves, and the real power starts with us believing that we can do and be the person that we want to be. That's this week's last word, folks. And I truly appreciate each and every one of you for joining us all this week for these dynamic conversations. I can't wait to share with you, show you what we got in store for you for next week. I'm going to talk to two sisters called Sister Sweets. They provided some desserts for the great ceremony that was happening at the White House for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Two dynamic young Black girls that have become dessert entrepreneurs. We're going to highlight their work next week. Also, we're going to talk a little bit with Nkechi Talafia, who's going to give us some insight about everything from social justice to reparations and more. This sister is dynamic, so we're going to bring her into the conversation. And I got some other special guests. So next week, you don't want to miss one day of the culture here on the Black Star Network. And this is why we actually, at the end of each show, that you support us, because we know this is Black-owned media and we need your support. BlackStarNetwork.com. Make sure that you do what you need to do to support us. Even if you don't have the money, then support us on social media. Share our videos. Make sure that you download the app. Tell your friends and family about it. Word of mouth is just as important as your dimes and pennies. We need your support, folks. And so we want you to make sure that you keep us unapologetic, unfiltered when it comes to Black-owned media and talking about the stories and issues that matter to us. BlackStarNetwork.com. All right, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank all of my culture crew members this week. And I want you to get ready at the 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time hour for Big Brother Roland Martin for Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk to each other on Monday and enjoy this very, very important time of year of Passover, Easter, and Ramadan. Let's continue to work to build up our own value in ourselves. Have faith in yourself, folks, and watch everything else will change in your benefit, for your benefit. Thank you for tuning into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.